you get through the process, you get through recovery. As you said, you've reconnected with God. You've met Carrie. You've gotten clean. You've gotten sober, and you've gotten this dream, this vision from God that He wanted you to be a nurse. Yep. Without a doubt, that's what you're supposed to do. So how did that all? Because this is about the time I started following you on Facebook. I believe I saw somehow one of your posts popped up. I friended you. I think you had just gotten out of the clinic in Utah, wasn't it?
Yep.
I think you had just gotten out of that, and you posted something really cool. It happened to hit my algorithm. Why, I don't know. Probably because of today is what I'm guessing.
Good.
So I saw it, and I was like, oh, this is cool. So I friended you, and God bless you. You friended back, and I just started following your journey. And this is where I was at the height of mine. You know, the last 10 years for me was I didn't go through a day without a drink.
Okay.
I just didn't.
Right.
You know, there may be a few days here and there in the last few months before I quit. I actually was able to, but that was by necessity. So I was with my wife 24/7, and she doesn't drink. So, and I was hauling RVs. It's hard to have a drink in your hand when you're hauling an RV. So,
yeah.
But this is where I was at. I was there. We get to the point where we're doing this podcast. I was drinking every podcast. I was getting embarrassingly drunk at times on these live streams. Okay. So that's how I'm coming into your story over the last 4 years going, I want that. I'm jealous of that. I wish I had his journey, but I wasn't to the point of being done.
Right.
So here's where you are. That's where I was at in my journey. So I'm watching this and I'm seeing you go after your dream of being a nurse. You got the felony on your record though, too. So apparently God did give you that vision because God was the one that worked all that out, right? To make it possible for you to get through school and to actually get hired as a nurse.
How was that possible? How did that all?
So
how in the world did that even happen? Because that's a mountain in and of itself.
It is. And that, again, is the reason why I started putting all my business out there. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have anything to hide and you are willing to share it all, there's nothing anybody can really say to you to embarrass you or to make you look bad about whatever, because you own it. You're comfortable with it. It is a part of your past, but it's not who you are presently. And so that's what I had to do, is become comfortable with that. The other part, too, is that in the whole recognizing I want to be a nurse was the whole getting to know myself, which happened at treatment, where, again, I kind of shared with you before that somebody had asked me maybe 10 years before that point, who is Willie Miller? And I was just like, that's a great question. God damn it. You just really burnt my brain. I don't know. And it hit me, though, how sad that was to me. Like, it's like, wow, I have no clue. Like, is he this football player guy? Is he, is he a business? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know who I am. And it just, that's where I was at, where I don't know who I am. And I really don't think I knew, because I think I was too worried about trying to be who you wanted me to be. If you wanted me to be the football guy, I'm going to be the football guy. If you think I'm a great businessman, I'm going to be the businessman. I wanted to please you, and I was not comfortable being me. And the thing that I knew about me from ever since I was little, because I still remember doing this questionnaire thing in high school where I checked all the boxes about how I really care about people. And it came out saying, like, you love people. You're great at X, Y, Z. And I think I had nurse as a thing on there. And I was like, yeah, I'm not showing this to any of the guys. I want to hear this crap. So it's kind of tossed it because I was too sensitive. I've always been sensitive. And it's like, when people would reject me or treat me in a certain way, and especially in, middle school, high school, because I was a kid who got beat up and bullied when I was younger. But the point is, I didn't want many people to know that side of me, how much I did care. So I had that little facade, the tough guy facade. So I was lost in that for a long period of time. But at treatment, I said, screw that. Whatever it takes to be sober and with knowing God. And I was like, I'm finally owning this. My mom was a nurse. I love people. I want to care for people. I'm going to be a nurse. And like you said, there was no way that could happen. But then as I did some research and I started talking to people, I found out as long as it's not like drug related or like a violent offense, then there's a possibility. So by sharing my story and by letting people know when they run into me or whatever, like, so what's going on with you now? And I'd share, well, this is what I had been doing, kind of like what it was like, what happened, what it's like now. So I kind of updated them on that scenario. And it got to the point where I was starting to do my classes at Metro because there's a whole list. There's like 12 courses I needed to complete because I already had a bachelor's. I did communication with Creighton to find out what would it take to get into Creighton because God made it apparent right away. Boom, you got to go to Creighton. Like, this is where you're going. Blue and white is all I saw. Blue and white, Creighton. And it's crazy. I know, right? As a guy that went to Nebraska, I was just kind of like, well, that kind of makes sense. I'm like, because when I got done in high school, there's no way you can get me to go to Creighton because it was the academic school and you got to be real smart to go there. And I didn't think I was smart. Go to Lincoln, you can be great at football. Yeah, and their classes are hard, but they're not impossible. Creighton was, to me, was seen as impossible. So I knew I needed to go somewhere that was seen as impossible to complete. I did all my courses through that course of knowing people and building relationships that I had from the past. I run into, say, like Bruce Rasmussen. I get a chance to kind of update on him because he knew, these guys have seen, like, when I got in trouble, they knew. So they're like, what are you doing now? What's going on with you now? And I let him know that I'm doing classes now. I'm sober now. And so, I'm looking forward to trying and getting Creighton. And he said, well, that's one of the things. He's like, I'm going to be watching you, as a lot of other people are, work your butt off, apply, and we'll see what happens. There was no, hey, apply to Creighton, I've got you, or anything like that. He was simply saying to me, people are watching. You're putting out there what you're doing. Keep doing that because it lets people know what you're doing. It lets people know what you're going after. He liked that vulnerability part. I think he didn't say that, but that's what I'm going to guess. Maybe that, because that caught your attention then, and me sharing and being open. So he's like, keep doing that. So by that time, it took about 2.5 years of doing those classes at Metro. When I applied, there's guys like him, and he was a big one. And there were other, Coach Osborne wrote a letter there too. But I had other instructors from Metro that were willing to write letters. There was other people from my past that were willing to write these letters because they had seen the change. They had witnessed that I was no longer the guy who didn't understand emotions and let them override his intelligence. They understood now that I'm the guy who understands what's going on with me. If something embarrasses me, if someone frustrates me, if I'm hungry, if I'm tired, I recognize those things and I don't allow it to be where I'm going to blow up at you. We're going to have a conversation. If we're friends, we're going to have a conversation and address the things. So they were seeing that. I get done with, classes from Metro. So I come with a 3.5 almost from Lincoln. I got the 4.0 from Metro and those courses there. And I apply. And on the application, I'm just completely truthful and honest. I'm like, yeah, I messed up. I made a piss poor decision. But the difference is this, is like when I wrote that, I also, through sobriety, recovery, working my program, right, making amends. Because I wrote that guy a letter that I had the incident with. Again, I don't know him, but I knew another officer that knew him. So I wrote him a letter where I let him know that I was truly and genuinely sorry and that I was really happy that nothing, say, bad had happened to him or his family, because it's something I like to make an amends on what has taken place. But I also thanked him. I said, look, you know what? This might sound really weird, but I also thank you for this. I said, because without getting in trouble, without being held accountable for like the last decade, I wouldn't have been forced to make changes that I made today. I'm like writing this letter and being genuine. This is a change for me. And also, I now have the full understanding. It doesn't matter what anyone does to me at all. It matters what do I do. So it doesn't matter if, if I just do you wrong just to start with, or if I do you a certain way after you've done me, towards me a certain way. It's all about what do I do? And I have that understanding today. So I wrote about that to Creighton, and I wrote, to them like, hey, yeah, I've had several things I've done, that are just dumb. I've had the lesson with addiction. And, but what I do know is I can't ever drink or use again as far as, the pain pills, things like that, or else I'm done. I get it, but that's what I'm committed to. I work my program of recovery. I go to XYZ places, things like that, as far as just letting them know that I'm accountable. And from that, and from having had a meeting with the dean who, got a chance to kind of personally talk to her about my story and everything else through my second mom, Margie, it worked out. Bruce wrote a very nice letter of recommendation where he gave me a very high, letter of recommendation. And I know that he really believed in me, and he still believes in me, but there's just some things that I know without certain people having followed the journey and having witnessed the changes and then being willing to write it, I wouldn't have gotten to Creighton, but I did. But then getting through Creighton again, there's people who were like, oh, wow, he's made the Creighton. It's going to suck when he gets done because he's not going to be able to license. And there's pretty much everyone was sold on that. They wouldn't tell me. I mean, one of my closest friends, Fred Hawkins, I love Fred. And I told Fred the day I met him at an event that this is my plan. And he told me he knew, and again, he celebrated these victories with me, but he's looked at me and he was like, I knew from the moment you shared with me that you were going to do it because you were that committed. And I could see it in your eyes and your body and everything. But he's like, you know, he knows a few people and he would always check in to see. And he had pretty much received the answer, no. If people are willing to do the right thing, then he hypothetically should be able to, but it more than likely it's not going to happen. So when I got done, it came the time to apply to the board or whatever. And I personally reached out and I went down there in person and met with their main contact, sat down with her, and I walked her through my story. I told her it's very important to me to be here, present, suit and tie, look you in the eye, talk about everything so that you know who I am. I said, so that way you can, whatever you see, you can engage on me in front of you. I'm like, and I'm going through Creighton's program. I'm like, it's an accelerated program. I've had a lot going on in my life, but I managed to get married during this program. I've managed to live life through this program. I've managed to rebuild a relationship with my daughter through this program. And now I'm graduating this program. And I'm asking for the state to consider to allow me to take the NCLEX upon passing and graduating from Creighton so that I can continue on my journey to help people and to love on people. And so, like I said, when I got done, they allowed me to take the exam. When I took the exam, I passed it right away. They had to wait until their next meeting. And I guess at their next meeting, they made a vote. And the vote, again, I don't know for sure, but I was told it's kind of unanimous that they gave me a free and clear license to practice in the state of Nebraska. Now, typically, if somebody has some stuff, they do whatever. There may be some check-ins they need to do, you know, provisional, and like every couple months, P-test, things like that. But it's like they were able to look at the fact of being at Creighton, completing Creighton, being sober all the way through before Creighton, during Creighton, still after Creighton, that they're like, this is a person that's shown rehabilitation. This is a person that's shown a change at heart. And again, I mean, I make living amends on a lot of things, and there's a lot of amends that I made personally, ones I never thought I would. But it's like, how bad do you want to be sober? And so, like I said, I have had to own some stuff with some people that I never, ever thought I would have done. And that's the price of sobriety, is giving it to God, letting it go. And truly, the hardest thing I still do struggle with is forgiving myself, not so much for what I've done to others, but for what I've done to myself, with how mean and nasty my PhD in that negative self-talk is. So that's why I love seeing other people. I love encouraging other people, because sometimes I'll even tell them, I'm also saying this in a bit because I need to hear it too. And I won't tell it to myself. So people know me well enough to know when I tell you something, I won't bullshit you. If there's XYZ, maybe if I don't want to say, I won't say it. But if there's some truth to what I got to say, I will say it to you. And it may sound weird to some people because they're not used to somebody giving them, say, a compliment like that. I don't care, because it's not just from me saying it, it's God. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not. The point is, from my heart, God just giving you an inspirational word of encouragement to give to somebody else. It doesn't matter. I don't worry about, do you view me as a manly man now, or do you view me as, less than? I don't care, because I know how God views me. And today I can look in the mirror and I know who the heck I am. And I can look myself in the eyes in the mirror, knowing that I'm just trying to be a little better every single day. So that's how the whole thing came about. And that's how the whole change happened. That's how Creighton allowed me in. That's how the state of Nebraska allowed me to test. That's how the state of Nebraska issued me a license. Then the other wonderful thing is that I work at Methodist Hospital. Methodist is a institution that, their core principles are being patient-centered. They're on respect. They're on teamwork. They're on excellence. And those are their main principles. And they felt in the changes that I made that I exemplified those core principles and values. And so they allow me to work there. And so, I work at Methodist, as you said, in the OR as a circulating RN. And that's my life today, man. Something that is completely different from where I was at 10 years ago. Because today's 2023. So 2013, again, 400 pounds, just checked out on 14 medications and on disability, get my little monthly check. And like now the changes that I made, going back to work, working myself, all disabilities are no more. I have to worry about a disability check, no more being deemed as any kind of, say, bipolar or any kind of issue like that. It's just simply understanding that addiction and alcoholism, like all that stuff, and the changes. There's a lot of getting to know myself that I've had to do, and I'm grateful for that.
So let's talk about that T-shirt you're wearing. I know that's close to your heart too. It's not just literally, but it's something that you're really wanting to get going, get people involved in, right?
It is. I wore this, on the Doc podcast as well. And it's the Athlete Survive, Keeping Hope Alive shirt. And basically for me, I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know my purpose once football was done. I was able to kind of remember my purpose or get that going and that feeling at treatment and understanding it was to be a nurse all along, and now it's time to go after that. Mm-hmm. That gave me hope. Having Margie Smith talk to me and slap me in the face when I was talking about all the negative stuff, that gave me hope. So these little buildings of hope. So again, that's the part about keeping the hope alive aspect, is for someone who may have lost that, who may have lost their focus, who doesn't know their purpose in today. But it goes a little further than that. It's, at first I was thinking, well, how we can help, say, younger athletes, things like that. And I was thinking that maybe it'll be something where it's helping with their mental health, or it's something where addiction, those that need help to go and get treatment. But there's other foundations that are really focusing on those, and some that have gotten in also on the addiction part. So therefore, my next aspect is you can provide some hope to, say, these younger athletes, reminding them and teaching them to have your own identity. Don't allow yourself to get sold solely on your athleticism, because one day that part of being an athlete is going to be gone. So who are you? So it's important to know that now as they're young, or like I talked to some older people, now you get to learn who you are. And it sucks as you're older to try and relearn, right? Know who the hell you are. A lot more baggage. But it's teaching them that while they're young, but also the aspect of the hope is letting them be comfortable in who they are, establishing their purpose. But the hope that that's the foundational aspect that I want to create, is to help these kids actually go into the medical field. And it's to help them pay for maybe the schooling to go to maybe Methodist to be like a surge tech, where they're clean, or where they're sterile processing, or they can be like a surge tech where they're handling the instruments. Or it gives them also the exposure. That's what I want to do, is collaborate with some of the people in the community to get some high school kids in to see what happens in the operating room, so they can understand what a nurse does, they can understand what an anesthesiologist does, or CRNA that's in there, and the doctors. And it can give some kids like myself, I didn't have a clue what happened in the OR. I had no idea. My dad was retired as an officer in the Air Force, so I got exposed to a little bit more, say, than other kids. But even with what I was exposed to, I didn't have a clue of that. So there's a lot of things that I think a lot of kids don't know that I want to help get them the exposure. And then the kids who cannot pay for it, let's have a foundation that can help pay for them, to do this. If this is something they're committed to, that keeps hope alive in not only them, but in the patients they're going to be serving. The patients are going to be hoping, whether they go into being a regular nurse, whether they go on to be a physician. Like I said, it fuels them with a purpose and a drive, and it keeps that hope alive for the people that need help in their medical health care, as people kind of decide they may not want to be in that field. But what's better than being a part of a team? Again, for kids that really love being on a team, or, even adults, hell, being in a room where you're all focused on a patient, like in the OR. There's other scenarios, will be an EMT or something on the patient, going and getting him. So there's all these aspects of how you can be involved in the medical community, where you're keeping a hope alive, not only with educating youngsters and getting them involved, but then again, we as people, man, we need one another. And it's like we get in these moments and all these things where all these nasty things can be happening. But ultimately, man, for me personally, nothing feels better than when you see a couple people coming together and helping, for a common goal, like that random stranger somebody sees fall down, somebody runs up, helps pick them up. I mean, those type of moments are freaking awesome. So that's why I have this. And it's not just about me. There's others that are doing different things where they've gone down a certain road and they've made a change. So that's really what it is, though. It's to kind of get caught up, though, on that fact of people being able to share and do those type of things, and just utilizing it as kind of like as a jumping point or whatever for it all to kind of begin.
Is there any particular reason why you chose soldiers, Spartans, or anything like that?
That's a good question. So my sobriety tattoo that I have down here on my calf that says Serenity is kind of like a Spartan that is basically just given to himself, and ultimately it's reminiscent of me with life. It's like I've stopped fighting life. It's like the battle daily of having to fight it, right? Because I needed everything to go my way, and still I struggle with that some days. Don't get me wrong, where I want things to go my way, but back before sobriety, it had to go my way. Mm-hmm. And if it didn't go my way, I'm going to drink over it, I'm going to use over it, I'm going to do something because things are just not going my way. Sobriety is all about giving it to God. So, the male soldier, and female soldier, they're really more in like just a position of just surrendering. Just like, what, we have battled, and it's just like anybody else. You don't have to be an athlete. Hell, you've gone through the battlefield of life, and if life has beat you down a little bit as you've tried to fight it, you now get to just surrender to the aspect of you don't have to fight and battle life. You can make changes in your own personal life. You can educate yourself. You can learn so that when life is throwing you these events, you can understand how to process them better, rather than somebody say calls you a certain name. Instead of you just getting mad, you can all of a sudden have some intelligence. Like, that's actually a really ignorant saying. The person is kind of ignorant. I am responsible for my own actions, what I say, what I do. Therefore, I just won't engage. You can start doing things like that, where before, man, I have, you say something like, well, yeah, F you too, something. Yeah, just be like, yeah, let's do it. No, that's the wonderful thing. So it's like, again, by surrendering, because again, I used to always think that's the weak point, but no, actually it's the acceptance that life is going to happen. I have to learn to try and be like water to flow with it. That's the great thing, right?
Going against the stream, you're only going to stay in one spot.
Yep. And that spot, if you stay long enough in that one spot, you're going to drown. You're going to drown. That's just how it happens. So it's like, you got to learn to go with the current.